been doing weird stuff. Every time it goes through an update, it does weird things to me. Hey, everybody. Welcome to These Happy Golden Years by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Live.
Wayfair presents so.
All righty. Okay, let me see here. I'm wearing the wrong glasses for this, but it'll have to do. It won't have to do. I'm wearing good bifocals, so. Hi. No, we're just about to start chapter 5 of Little Town. No. All right, folks. My brain, I'm firing on all different cylinders right now. I've got, I just finished up editing tomorrow's video for our half-acre homestead. I just finished the quilt top for my grandson, and it's kind of laying on top of the quilt frame. I was going to quilt it live today. I don't have time. And so things are just kind of going, and I had to get supper going in the crock pot and all that fun stuff. Hey, everybody. All right. Chapter 5 of These Happy Golden Years. A stiff upper lip. All that week, everything went wrong. Everything. Nothing gave Laura the least encouragement. The weather was sullen. Dull clouds lay low and flat above the gray-white prairie, and the wind blew monotonously. The cold was damp and clammy. The stove smoked. Mrs. Brewster let the housework go. She did not sweep out the snow that Mr. Brewster tracked in. It melted and made puddles with ashes around the stove. She did not make their bed or even spread it up. Twice a day, she cooked potatoes and salt pork and put them on the table. The rest of the time, she sat brooding. She did not even comb her hair. And it seemed to Laura that Johnny squalled with temper that whole week. Once Laura tried to play with him, but he only struck at her, and Mrs. Brewster said angrily, "Leave him alone." After supper, he went to sleep on his father's knee, and Mr. Brewster just sat. The air seemed to smolder with Mrs. Brewster's silence. And he sat, Laura thought, like a bump on a log. She had heard that said, but she had not realized what it meant. A bump on a log does not fight anyone, but it cannot be budged. The silence was so loud that Laura could hardly study. When she went to bed, Mrs. Brewster quarreled at Mr. Brewster. She wanted to go back east. Laura could hardly have studied well anyway. She was so worried about her school. In spite of all she could do, everything went from bad to worse. It began on Monday when Tommy did not know one word of his spelling lesson. Ruby would not let him have the speller, he said. "Why, Ruby?" Laura said in surprise. Then sweet little Ruby turned into a very spitfire. Laura was so startled that before she could stop them, Ruby and Tommy were quarreling. Sternly, Laura stopped that. She went to Tommy's seat and gave him the speller. "Now learn that lesson," she said. "You may stay in at recess and recite it to me." The next day, Ruby did not know her lesson. She stood before Laura with her hands behind her, innocent as a kitten, and said, "I could not learn it, teacher. You gave Tommy the speller." Laura remembered to count to 10, and then she said, "So I did. Well, you and Tommy may sit together to learn your spelling." They were not studying the same lessons in the book, but they could hold it open in two places, leaning to one side. Tommy could study his lesson while Ruby, leaning to the other, could study hers. In that way, Laura and Mary used to learn their different lessons in Ma's speller. But Tommy and Ruby did not. They sat silently, struggling, each to open the book wider at his place. Again and again, Laura said sharply, Is this this is public, not unlisted, right? I just realized sometimes this channel goes to unlisted. I better check. Nope. It's all good. But Tommy and Ruby did not. They sat silently, struggling, each to open the book wider at his place. Again and again, Laura said sharply, "Tommy, Ruby." But neither of them learned their spelling well. Martha could not work her arithmetic problems. Charles sat idly staring at the window, where nothing was to be seen but the gray weather. When Laura told him to keep his eyes on his lessons, he stared, daydreaming at the page. Laura knew he was not seeing it. I'm sorry, folks. I feel nauseated. Sorry, just give me a second. Do you know we got snow? It's snowing out. Who had the audacity to take off their snow tires before the 15th of April? It's their fault. Okay, my tummy's a little bit better now. Martha could not work her arithmetic problems. Charles sat idly staring out the window where nothing was to be seen but the gray weather. And when Laura told him to keep his eyes on his lessons, he stared daydreaming at a page. Laura knew he was not seeing it. She was too little. When Martha and Charles and Clarence stood before her to recite, they were too much for her. Though she did her best, she could not interest them in learning, even geography and history. Like, that's a big prize, learning geography and history. On Monday, Clarence knew the part of his history lesson, but when Laura asked him when the first settlement was made in Virginia, he answered carelessly, "Oh, I didn't study that part." "Well, why didn't you?" "The lesson was too long," Clarence replied, with a look from narrow laughing eyes that said, "What are you going to do about it?" Laura was furiously angry, but as her eyes met his, she knew that he expected her to be angry. What could she do? She could not punish him. He was too big. She must not show any anger. So she kept quiet while she turned the pages of the history consideringly. Her heart was faint, but she must not let him know that. Finally, she said, "It's too bad that you did not learn this. It will make your next lesson so much longer, for we must not keep Charles and Martha back." She went on hearing Charles and Martha recite the lesson. Then she gave them all another lesson of the usual length. The next day, Clarence did not know his history at all. "It's no use trying to learn such long lessons," he said. "If you do not want to learn, Clarence, you are the loser," Laura told him. She kept on asking him questions in his turn, hoping he would grow ashamed of answering, "I do not know," or "I don't know," but he did not. Every day she felt more miserably that she was failing. She could not teach school. Her first school would be a failure. She would not be able to get another certificate. She would earn no more money. Mary would have to leave college, and that would be Laura's fault. All the stress they put on her, eh? She could hardly learn her own lessons, though she studied them not only at night, but at noon and recess. When she went back to town, she would be behind in her class. All the trouble came from Clarence. He could make Ruby and Tommy behave if he would. He was their older brother. He could learn his lessons. He was much smarter than Martha and Charles. How she wished that she was big enough to give Clarence the whipping he deserved. Slowly, the week dragged by, the longest and most miserable week that Laura had ever known. On Thursday, when Laura said, "Third arithmetic class rise," Clarence stood up quickly and Charles began to move languidly, but Martha half rose and yelled, "Ow! and sat down as though she were jerked. Clarence had driven his knife through her braid and pinned it to the desk. He had done it so quietly that Martha knew nothing about it until she tried to stand up. "Clarence," Laura said. He did not stop laughing. Tommy was laughing. Ruby was giggling. Even Charles was grinning. Martha sat red-faced with tears in her eyes. Laura was in despair. They were all against her. She could not discipline them. Oh, how could they be so mean? For an instant, she remembered Miss Wilder, who had failed to teach the school in town. This was the way she felt, Laura thought. Then suddenly she was very angry. She yanked the knife up, clicked it shut in her fist. She did not feel small as she faced Charles. "Shame on you," she said, and he stopped laughing. They all went still. Then Laura marched back to her table and rapped on it. "Third class in arithmetic, rise, come forward." They did not know the lesson. They could not solve the problems, but at least she went through the motions of trying. Laura felt tall and terrible, and they obeyed her meekly. At last she said, "You may all repeat this lesson tomorrow. Class is dismissed." Her head ached as she went toward Mrs. Brewster's hateful house. She could not be angry all the time, and discipline was no good if the pupils would not learn their lessons. Ruby and Tommy were far behind in spelling. Martha could not parse a simple compound sentence. I can't. Nor add fractions. That I can do. And Clarence was learning no history. Laura tried to hope that she could do better tomorrow. Friday was quiet. Everybody was dull and listless. They were only waiting for the week to end, and so was she. The hands of the clock had never moved so slowly. In the afternoon, the clouds began to break, and the light grew brighter. Just before 4 o'clock, pale sunshine streamed eastward across the snowy land, and then Laura heard sleigh bells faintly ringing. "You may put away your books," she said. That miserable week was ended. At last, nothing more could happen now. School is dismissed. The music of the bells came riding louder and clearer. Laura's coat was buttoned and her hood tied when Prince and Lady passed the window with the dancing bells. She snatched up her books and dinner pail, and then the worst thing of all happened. Clarence opened the door, thrust in his head, and shouted, "Teacher's Beau's here!" Almanzo Wilder must have heard. He could not help hearing. Laura did not know how she could face him. What could she say? How could she tell him that she had given Clarence no reason to say such a thing? He was waiting in the cold wind, and the horses were not blanketed. She must go out. It seemed to her that he was smiling, but she could hardly look at him. He tucked her in and said, "All snug?" "Yes, thank you," she answered. The horses went swiftly, their strings of bells merrily ringing. It would be better to say nothing of Clarence, Laura decided. As Maud would say, least said, soonest mended. The family was mentally ill. I don't think the family was mentally ill. I just think that was the way it was for the times. You obeyed your parents and you did everything you could to be a functioning member of your family and society. Yes, Laura got the brunt of the work, of the making of money with her father, all of those things. But she did it. She did so willingly, even though she said she didn't want to be a teacher, even though she said she didn't see Almanzo as her beau. That's not the way things turn out, right? Would we like... Oh, I got itch. Oh, would we like another chapter? Answer quick before I change my mind. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, all I needed was a yes or a no. If I'd have gotten a no, I would have said, oh yeah, I'm always up to. How you doing, Linda? All right. Chapter 6, Managing. While Pa played the fiddle that evening at home, Laura felt much better. 2 weeks were gone, she thought. There were but 6 more. She could only keep on trying. The music stopped and Pa asked, "What's the trouble, Laura? Don't you want to make a clean breast of it?" She had not meant to worry them. She had intended to say nothing that was not cheerful. But suddenly she said, "Oh, Pa, I don't know what to do." She told him all about that miserable week at school. "What can I do?" she asked. "I must do something. I can't fail, but I'm failing. If only I were big enough to whip Clarence. That's what he needs, but I can't." "You might ask Mr. Brewster to," Carrie suggested. He could make Clarence behave himself." "Oh, but Carrie," Laura protested. How can I tell the school board that I can't manage the school? No, I can't do that." "Well, there you have it, Laura," Pa said. "It's all in that word, manage. You might not get far with Clarence, even if you were big enough to punish him as he deserves. Brute force can't do much. Everybody's born free, like it says in the Declaration of Independence. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And good or bad, nobody but Clarence can ever boss Clarence. You just better manage." "I know, Pa," Laura said, "but how?" "Well, first of all, be patient. Try to see things his way, so as far as you can. Better not try and make him do anything because you can't. He doesn't sound to me like a really vicious boy." "No, he isn't," Laura agreed. "But I guess I just don't know how to manage him." "If I were you," Ma began gently, and Laura remembered that Ma had been a school teacher, "I'd give way to Clarence and not pay any attention to him. It's attention he wants. That's why he cuts up. Be patient. Be pleasant and nice with him. Put all your attention on the others and straighten them out. Clarence will come around." "That's right, Laura. Listen to your Ma," said Pa. "Wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove." "Charles," Ma said. Pa took up his fiddle and began saucily playing to her, "Can she make a cherry pie, Billy boy, Billy boy? Can she make a cherry pie, charming Billy?" I can't watch the TV show now. I love that TV show. I watched every episode ever made, but you know what? After reading these books and reading the autobiography, it's not, they're just using their names and names of places and stuff. They're barely actually doing anything by the book. So I can't watch it after all this. But I watched it faithfully when I was growing up. Sunday afternoon, when Laura went flying over the sunny snow in the cutter, Almanzo Wilder said, "It chirks you up to go home over Sunday. I've got an idea it's pretty tough staying at Brewster's." "It's my first school, and I never was away from home before," Laura answered. "I get homesick. I do appreciate you driving me so far to take me home." "It's a pleasure," he said. It was polite for him to say so, but Laura saw no pleasure for him in a long cold drive. They hardly said a word the whole way because of the cold, and she knew very well that she would not be entertaining anyway. She could hardly think of anything to say to strangers. The horses were warm from trotting, and they must not stand in one moment in the cold wind. So at Brewster's door, he stopped them only long enough for Laura to jump quickly out. As he went on, he touched his fur hat with his gloved hand and called through the sleigh bells' music, "Goodbye till Friday." Laura felt guilty. She had not expected him to make that long drive every week. She had hoped she did not think she was expecting him to do it. Surely he was not thinking of maybe being her beau. She was almost used to Mrs. Brewster's miserable house. She had only to forget it as well as she could. To study until bedtime, and in the mornings to make her bed neatly, swallow her breakfast, wipe the dishes, and get away to school. There were only 6 weeks more now. On Monday morning, school began as glumly as it had ended on Friday. But Laura was determined to make a change, and she began at once. When Tommy had stumbled through his reading lesson, she smiled at him and said, "Your reading is improving, Tommy. You deserve a reward. Would you like to copy your spelling lesson on the blackboard?" Tommy smiled, so she gave him the spelling book and a new piece of chalk. When he copied his lesson, she praised his writing and told him now he could study his spelling from the board. She gave the spelling book to Ruby. "Your reading lesson was very good too," she said to Ruby. "Tomorrow, would you like to copy your spelling lesson on the blackboard?" "Oh, yes, ma'am," Ruby answered eagerly, and Laura thought, that's one thing managed. Clarence fidgeted, dropped his books, and pulled Martha's hair, but Laura remembered Ma's advice and did not see him. Poor Martha did not know her grammar lesson at all. She was so hopelessly confused about complex and compound sentences that she stopped trying to understand them. She answered only, I don't know. "I think you must take this lesson over, Martha," Laura had to say, and then she had an inspiration and went on. "I would like to go over it again myself. I'm trying to keep up with my class in town, and grammar is hard. If you would like to, we can go through this lesson together at the noon hour. Would you like that?" "Yes, I would," Martha answered. So at noon, when they had eaten their dinners, Laura took up the grammar and said, "Ready, Martha?" Martha smiled back at her. Then Clarence asked, "Is that why you study all the time, to keep up with your class in town?" "Yes, I study at night, but I have to study here too," Laura answered, passing by him toward the blackboard. Clarence whistled, "Phew," under his breath, but Laura paid no attention. At the blackboard, she worked with Martha until Martha could diagram a complex compound sentence all by herself. Martha said, "I understand it now. After this, I won't dread the grammar recitation so much." So that was the trouble, Laura thought. Martha had dreaded the grammar so much that she could not learn it. "Don't dread a lesson?" Laura asked. "I'll always be glad to study any of them with you if you want me to." Martha's brown eyes smiled almost like Ida's as she said, "I would like to sometimes, thank you." Laura wished that she need not be the teacher. She and Martha were the same age and might have been friends. She had decided what to do about Clarence's history lessons. He was far behind Charles and Martha, but Laura asked him no questions that he could not answer. And when she set the lesson for the next day, she said, "This doesn't mean you, Clarence. It would make your lesson far too long. Let me see. How many pages are you behind?" He showed her and she said, "How many do you think you can learn? Would 3 be too much?" "No," he said. There was nothing else he could say. No contention he could make. "Then class is dismissed," said Laura. She wondered what Clarence would do. Pa's advice and Ma's were working so well so far, but would it work with Clarence? She did not ask him many questions next day, but he seemed to know the 3 pages perfectly. Charles and Martha were now 9 pages ahead of him. Laura set them 7 pages more and said to Clarence, "Would another 3 pages be too much?" "You may take that much if you like." "I'll learn it," Clarence said, and this time he looked at Laura with a friendly smile. She was so surprised she almost smiled back, but she said quickly, "Make it shorter if it's too much." He's the oldest one in the class, and now he's looking either stupid or stubborn. Which is he gonna fess up to, right? "I'll learn it," Clarence repeated. "Very well. Class dismissed." She was becoming adjusted to the new pattern of the days. A silent breakfast in the chill of early morning, a shivering walk to the cold school shanty, then the usual round of recitations, with recess and noon breaking into 4 equal parts. Then the cold walk back to Brewster's house for a cheerless supper, an evening of study, and sleep on the narrow sofa. Mrs. Brewster was always sullen and silent. She seldom ever quarreled at Mr. Brewster anymore. The week passed and Friday came again. When the history class came forward to recite, Clarence said, "You may hear me recite as far as Martha and Charles. I've caught up with them." Laura was amazed. She exclaimed, "But how could you, Clarence?" "If you can study at night, I can," Clarence said. She led by example, right? Laura almost smiled at him again. She could have liked him so much if she had not been the teacher. The brown sparkle in his eyes were like the blue sparkles in Pa's, but she was the teacher. "That is good," she said. "Now you can all three go on together." With 4 o'clock came the music of sleigh bells, and Clarence loudly whispered, "Teacher's beau." I would have corrected him right there. I would have said, "No, he is a friend of my father's who's doing my dad a favor," right? But she shouldn't have to explain herself either. Laura's cheeks grew hot, but she said quietly, "You may put away your books. School is dismissed." She dreaded that Clarence might shout again, but he did not. He was well on his way toward home with Tommy and Ruby when Laura shut the shanty door behind her and Almanzo tucked her again into the cutter. Thank you for joining me for these happy golden years. And that was chapter 5 and 6. Whenever I get a moment, whether it's after a live or whatever, I'm going to try and read, okay? I love you guys. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you the next time. I got 20 minutes. Mwah. Love you. Poke. Poke.